consciousness equals energy equals beauty equals love equals wisdom equals purity equals truth. It's all the same trip. It's all the same trip. This is a quote from Ram Dass's book, Be Here and Now. And I want you to keep this quote in mind as we have a discussion here about the institution of science. And if you live in the Western world, you might have noticed, just a tiny little bit, that the general population takes its authority in matters of health, in matters of wealth, in matters of prosperity, in pretty much all life affairs from the institution of science. You probably have come across that meme, it's true because it's science, bitch. You know, there's a lot of those. And you might tell yourself, you know, hey, this is a good thing. You know, this is an institution that takes things, measures them over and over and over, and comes up with objective truths. The institution of science is an institution in the pursuit of truth. This is why I told you, keep in mind that very first line. Consciousness equals beauty, equals wisdom, equals love, equals truth. Okay? You could think of science as a particular way in which God consciousness is trying to find itself. It's trying to find its way back to the source. Okay? And there are many ways and infinite ways to find your way to the divine. This is why there are an endless amounts of philosophies and religions and spiritual practices, and religion is no different. Science is no different. In fact, science is a religion. Okay, it's just that most people who only take the authority of science would not like to see that. They would not like to label it as science because it's objective. Okay? However, science is based on beliefs, and the first belief that science is based on is materialism. That the world is material, that consciousness happens inside the brain, and when you die, that's it. And we're just material beings, material creatures. We come to be and then we perish, which is true in the physical sense, okay? But that's one of the beliefs of science, okay? I see science as a noble institution that is, for the most part, genuinely in pursuit of truth. I really see it as just another way for God consciousness to find itself back to itself. Okay, just another trip, another trip, right? It's all leading to the same trip, another trip. Let's find the truth. We're science, we're going to take things very objectively, we're going to measure them, we're going to have repeated evidence that this is the way it is. Okay? So, for example, you get 100 people and you tell them, hey, can you fly? And then none of them can. And then you get another 100, another 100, another 100. And you realize that, hey, we have a sample of, say, 1 million people and none of them can fly. So there must be something to the law of gravity, which is a law, which is a fact. Okay? Of course, if you have been watching these videos enough and you're probably a little bit into Buddhism and whatnot, Eastern mysticism, levitation is not uncommon. Okay? Levitation is not an uncommon thing, especially in Tibet. Okay? So even that, okay? Even that, the law of gravity is not really verifiable. I mean, it really isn't, because if somebody can do something, that should make the law automatically untrue. However, that's not how science works. Okay? That's not how science works. In fact, I'll use an example of Wim Hof, who is basically taking this ancient breathing techniques called Bahasrika in yoga, and he's sort of bringing it into science now, right? And you can go watch his documentary with Vice. Wim Hof is a noble, this is Wim Hof. is a very noble man in my perspective, because he's really fighting a tough fight. He's really keen on bringing ancient wisdom to science, and he's going through the trials and the tributes of having to go through the vigorous methodology of testing in science. And even though, you know, go watch the Vice documentary, right? Even though he practically proved, he trained 12 people in the breathing technique, and they all were able to suppress the reaction of the bacteria, still, that's not scientific enough. Because it has to be measured over and over and over and over before it becomes a fact. Okay? So he says on the Joe Rogan podcast something along the lines of, you know, the way science works is exception confirms the rule. So if there is one exception, it confirms the rule. I mean, it is a saying. I don't know if it's all scientists exactly follow that line of thought, but that would be a disaster, because exception should collapse the rule. If one person can do it, okay, then I'm gonna go to that person and I'm gonna be like, hey, hi Wim Hof, you can withstand what we thought in science books, and we wrote it in science books. Hey, Wim, you could do things that we have in the science book. It says impossible for human physiology. Can you teach me? That's it. That's it. If there's one outlier, it should collapse the rule. Okay, so we have an outlier here, but that's not scientific. It's one person. Oh, it's just one person. We have to verify it and measure it over and over and over. But doesn't it actually seem logical to you that if one case is if there's one outlier, shouldn't that collapse the rule? And I mean, that's what Wim Hof keeps saying over and over. That's what he's trying to prove. Okay? And if you watch the documentary, after they've gone through this initial experiment, the control group, the 12 people he trained versus the people he didn't train, all 12 people were able to suppress the bacteria response just with breathing and meditation and visualization. The other 12 all got sick. He was crying after, because he says he's gone through a lot of ridicule by scientists and a lot of skepticism and a lot of just, he was crying after. He was crying. Right? He's been doing this for almost 30 years, and he's just starting to bring it to science. So, doesn't it seem reasonable to you? Doesn't it seem logical that if there is an outlier, that collapses the rule as opposed to confirms the rule? I don't understand. I don't understand. Science, in the way it is set right now, it's trying to generalize everything. It really is. I mean, if you look at it, step outside, just step outside and see what is going on here. Science is trying to make generalizations. So the law of gravity, for example, is a generalization. Humans are bound to the law of gravity. Material objects are bound to the law of gravity, and therefore nobody can fly. It's impossible to fly. Now that becomes a belief system. Of course, in Tibet and you know, really esoteric monasteries, they would laugh at you. And in fact, I was watching a documentary on this boy, this 15-year-old boy who's been sitting in meditation for 10 months. They call him the next Buddha. He's been sitting there, he's 15 years old, he hasn't had any drink, any water, anything like that. Of course, very, very, very skeptical scientists went there to see and recorded him, and they ended up recording him, I think, for something like 69 hours, just sitting there, no water, no food, nothing like that. And then they had to leave the premise or something. But anyway, there were some Buddhist monks there, Tibetan Buddhist monks. And when one of the interviewers said, you know, science says we can't go on this much without food or without water, the monks were laughing. That was their reaction. Okay? They were laughing. They were legitimately, and you can see like a very genuine, like, oh, how cute, like, oh, so cute. Like, they almost like want to pinch the interviewer's cheeks, right? Oh, you're so cute. Oh, look at you, you're so cute with your skepticism. And then they said, you know, in Buddhism, we don't believe in, they said something along the lines of, in Buddhism, we see reality for what it is, and we know what is possible, and we do what is possible. We have, you know, we meditate, and we have amazing focus levels. So they said something along that line, but their first initial reaction was a laughter. Okay, you know, science. If you really see science, it's like it is in the pursuit of truth. It is one way in which God is trying to find its way back to itself. It's more like the 2-year-old. Okay, I mean it's a young, modern science. I'm talking about modern Western science. It's a young institution. It's a young way of interpreting reality. That's all it is. Okay, religions are certain ways of interpreting reality. Science is a way of interpreting reality, a system of interpreting reality. Hinduism is a system of interpreting reality. In my books, science and Hinduism and any religion, Buddhism, it's just systems, okay? They're all religions. Different softwares, different systems of interpreting reality, okay? So, the way I see science, it's like the 2-year-old. The 2-year-old hanging around, right? He's a new kid on the block, he's 2 years old, and you know, you got the older systems, the more established ones, right? The people who can fly and leave their bodies at will, and they basically read your future, and they literally decide the day they're leaving their body, literally, like Vivekananda. You know, he announced it. He sat down, his disciples were around him, he said, I'm leaving my body, bye-bye, I'm dropping my body, they call it dropping my body, right? Systems that have been around for thousands of years and have figured out some crazy shit. Crazy only from the perspective of this normal. We call this paranormal. We think what normal is. Where do you think we pick up our beliefs about what normal is? Things like science. Okay? Institutions like science, who are limited in their perception of reality. So, science is like a 2-year-old. Okay? Probably why the Tibetan monks were laughing their ass off when the interviewer was showing his skepticism. Because it's like a 2-year-old. Imagine a 2-year-old comes up to you and says, I'm gonna beat you up. Okay? Wouldn't you just like laugh at him and pinch his cheeks and play around with him? Even, what I would do if a 2-year-old came up to me and said, hey, you know, I'm gonna beat you up. You know, I'm gonna beat you up. I'll probably like make believe. You know, I'll play with the kid. You know, I'll let him beat me up even. You know, I'll let him beat me up. I'll like, he'll punch me here and I'll like pretend like, oh, like, you know. That's what I would do. Okay? That's what I would do. Probably why those Tibetan monks were laughing their ass off. That's what I would do. I'd play with him. And science is that 2-year-old kid. And eventually he'll grow up. Eventually he'll grow up. Look. If you follow the authority of science, you'll get somewhere. It's just going to take a really long time. I mean, you'll grow up. There's no rush. You'll grow up. You're 2 years old. You'll be 3. You'll be 4. You'll be 5. You'll be 6. You'll be 7. You'll be 8, you'll keep growing up, you'll grow up in due time, right? You'll grow up. That's fine, it's cool. We'll all get there. We're all wired, God consciousness is wired to find its way back home. You'll grow up, there's no rush. You can hang around, you're 2, you know, be a kid. Be a kid right now, do what 2-year-olds would do. And that's what science is. Science is doing what 2-year-olds would do with all the skepticism, okay? It's very skeptical, and it's skeptical because it started off rejecting the authority of the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church was 10 times worse than modern science, okay? So if anything, this is in the West, in you know, the Western world, this is still a better system than the Catholic Church, okay? Much better, it's a greater improvement, okay? However, still limited, okay? I mean, if there is a software and there is 100 versions of it, version 10 is better than version 1, but I want version 100, okay? I want version 100. I mean, version 10 is better than version 1, but it's not version 100. It's not the final, most evolved version. It's not the final, most evolved system. And science is very young, and it's very young in its understanding, and it works very slowly. The way science works, it works, I mean, even though Wim Hof has already proven with 12 people he trained that his method can activate the autonomous nervous system, the immune nervous system at will. He proved it. 12 people he trained. There was a control group and an experiment group. Okay, and even though he proved it, still, that's not scientific enough. It works very slowly. It's a turtle. It's a turtle. It's a young kid. A young turtle even, and it works very slowly. So if you want to follow science, by all means, if that's your way of finding your way back home, of finding the truth, You know, consciousness equals love, equals beauty, equals wisdom. It's all the same trip. We're all trying to find our way back home. And I'll tell you what's going to help the 2-year-old kid grow up. Quantum physics. Okay, the double slit theory, simulation theory. Simulation theory is science stumbling. It's not even a theory yet, by the way. It's a hypothesis. Okay, it's a hypothesis. And so it'll take a long time before it becomes a fact. Okay? Simulation hypothesis is what the Hindus describe in their much evolved system of interpreting reality as Maya, as illusion. Okay, and these are systems that are 3, 4, 5,000 year old, and they have been really, really refined. Okay, this is why I focus on that stuff more on this channel. I'm in my own personal life, I have come to largely reject the authority of science. I don't really listen to science anymore. I mean, I really don't, because it's a 2-year-old. I'll play with him. That's what I do. I play with science, okay? Meaning if somebody comes up with a cool study, you know, scientific research has shown us this is not, I'll be like, okay, let's play with it a little bit. But I don't take it too far. I don't take it too far, right? Because I recognize there are much more evolved systems out there for interpreting reality. Okay, I want to learn from those who announce the day of their death and they just leave their body at will. I mean, that's what I want to learn from. Okay, teach me. I want to learn from people who can withstand unnatural temperatures in unnatural conditions for the human body. Okay, and I mean, Wim Hof learned practically 70 to 80% of what he does from Buddhists and Hindus, from Tibetan Buddhists, Tumo meditation, and Hindus, yoga, Bhastrika. His breathing technique is a yogic breathing technique called Bhastrika. I want to learn from those people. Okay, they figure some shit out. They have some shit figured out. I'm not saying they have everything figured out, but I'm saying if they can do that, they have some shit figured out. Okay, I want to learn from that. So I play with science a little bit, right? I'll give you a little example here. Okay, so here we have, as you can see, I'm a banana addict. Here we have a banana. Okay, this is a banana, right? A very nice banana. It's spotty. It's pretty much ready to eat. Nice and ripe, okay? Here we have a banana. Now, if I'm walking around and I see this banana, I see it, there's a banana, boom, I pick it up. Beautiful. I look at it. Now, see, I'm like on a strong microdose today, so I can look at something and I can really feel its energy. Now, I'm walking around in nature and I see a banana. Oh, that looks so good. I'm gonna eat the banana. I'm hungry, I'm gonna eat the banana. And I eat, you know, there's maybe 3, 4 of them, and I eat them and I feel so good. I mean, trying to eat a banana. This is the electromagnetic energy in a banana. I'm gonna make separate videos for bananas, right? Bananas are incredible. I'm not gonna go into it, but the energy here, the vibration here, okay, it's incredible. Now, it's holistic, it's got everything. I don't need to know what's in it. I really don't, okay? I know intuitively this is amazing. Okay, I know intuitively this is amazing. Now, science, because science is very much about dissecting, going in. It's going to go in and it's going to identify with names, right? I mean, science is stuck in concepts, so much in concepts. We're going to identify nutrients, and this has this amount of potassium, which is just a name. It's a name for a molecule that science has identified. You ever questioned what these things are? Just a name for something. And science has, you know, identified that this is good for you, potassium. But do I really need to know that? I just know that I'm going to eat this whole thing and it's going to give me energy. Okay? That's all I need to know. Right? And then it goes into, this and that. And then the RDAs, right? Which is based on an unhealthy sample. All this RDA, you need this amount of potassium, this amount of this. You ever try to meet the RDA? You have to eat a lot to meet the RDA of all the foods. The recommended daily intake of something. Or, RDI, right? It recommended daily intake. RDI, okay? You're gonna have to eat a lot of food every day. When it's much healthier not to eat much, period. That's actually much healthier for you. to meet the recommended daily intake. Why do you think the recommended daily intake for all the nutrients is so high? Because the population sample is so unhealthy and they can't even absorb nutrients, and so they need to eat so much just to compensate for their lack of absorption and to compensate for their unhealthy bodies. You see, so you gotta be careful, right? That's why you play. You know, my recommendation for the audience of this channel, at least, okay? Play with science, but don't take it too seriously. Don't take it too seriously. It's largely limited in its perception, and some of its foundations are based on wood. Like the whole recommended daily intake of vitamins. I'm just giving you a small example here, okay? That's because it used a very unhealthy sample. Now you try, trust me, I've had like a chart here. I was like, I'm gonna make every recommended daily intake, every single nutrient on the chart. I went on that trip for like 3 months. And it turns out I gotta eat a lot just to do that. Now I know, if you don't eat much and you do a lot of fasting, you're actually a much healthier individual. You know, I'll read you a quote here. To become learned, gain daily. To obtain Tao, reduce daily. Reduce and reduce and reduce until all action is reduced to non-action. Then nothing is done, yet nothing is left undone. I don't need to know what's in a banana, okay? I just know this is good, intuitively. With my heart, I can look at it and say, wow, oh, wow, you know? I can just use my senses. This is amazing. It's a holistic thing. I'm gonna eat the whole thing. I'm not going to dissect it and see what the nutrients are and am I gonna meet my... I'll give you an example of what modern science is like. And I'm kind of using my own version of Plato's allegory of the cave. Suppose, okay, I'm gonna suppose that this is the house that I'm in right now. You know, I got drapes and windows, but I'm gonna suppose that I was born here. There are no windows. There is nothing at all. No windows. Nothing. I'm in the house. There's nothing. No windows. Nothing whatsoever. And I grew up in this house, and that's all I know. I don't know that this is a house, that there's an outside, there is trees, and there is a sun, and there's people and water. I don't know all of that. I just know the house. I grew up in it. I think this is where reality is. Okay, and one day, I hear some sounds, right? And I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. What's wrong with the house? I go down to the basement. I'm freaking out. I'm checking out. What's going on? What's wrong? What's wrong with the house? What's wrong with the house? There is something wrong with the house. 2 days later, there's no more sound. And I'm like, oh, okay, the house is good, right? Days later, you know, I hear something, you know, like, the house is crumbling, it's shaking, okay? The house is shaking. And I'm like, what's wrong with the house? What's wrong with the house? What's wrong with the house? And I'm kind of freaking out a little bit here. What's wrong with the house? It's shaking. And then 45 minutes later, it's not shaking anymore. And I'm like, okay, nothing wrong with the house. Now, one day, somebody takes me out of the house and says, hey, look, there's something outside the house. And I'm like, whoa, there's sun, there's trees, what are these things? Wow, this is reality. And then somebody explains to me that the shaking in the house was in fact an earthquake. And the sounds you heard was in fact some rain. Okay? And I'm like, ah, that's why. That's why. And science is the same way. Science right now, it's in the house, it thinks that's all there is. Okay? And it's like trying to figure out, meet your daily intake of this, and that. Do this, eat that, eat kale, have a kale smoothie, do the, you know? It thinks there's something wrong with the house. It's looking inside the house. It's not inside the house. Look for outside. There's a reality outside. Okay? Look at things more holistically. Science dissects. It's intellectual. It's very intellectual. It's purely intellectual, purely rational. And it wants to dissect everything and divide everything. And it's come to my attention that I have to stop this and record because we're coming to a recording limit. Yeah, so as I was saying, modern Western science is dissecting things. It's using this knife. They call this, by the way, in yoga, they call the intellect like a knife. They look at it, it cuts everything. And I mean, if you look at your intellect, it's always trying to cut things. It's living in subject, object, us and them. Always trying to separate. The mind is an instrument of separation. Science is a mental institution. When I say a mental institution, it is you know, when I say mental, I'm talking, you know, when we talk about the mental worlds, you know, astral worlds, causal worlds. Science is a mental institution only occupied with material existence. Thinks materialism. I mean, materialism is all there is to life is the material world, and it's trying to dissect everything. And it thinks there's something wrong in the house, so it always tells you eat kale, eat this, more protein, more this, more that, eat this. It's imagine you didn't know there's anything outside. I didn't know there's anything outside the house. I'd be freaking out when I hear noises, and I'd be freaking out when the house is shaking. I'd go everywhere to the house. I'd go to the basement. I'd go upstairs. What's wrong? What's wrong? But really, there's something outside. Look outside. Look at things more holistically. See yourself as part of the organism. Okay, and if science is going to move forward, if the 2-year-old kid is going to grow up more, he's going to have to learn how to look at things more holistically. Okay, if he really wants to grow faster and taller and bigger. Okay, otherwise he's gonna be stuck for a little while, and he might have a little trouble growing up. Even he might end up being like really short when he grows up. He's gonna have to look at things more holistically. That's the truth. He's gonna have to look at things more holistically. He's gonna have to look at a banana as a banana and not as a potassium and whatever, B6 and folate and all that stuff. Okay, it's gonna have to look at it as a banana. It's gonna have to look at a human as part of the organism. So when something's wrong with you, you don't just take pills. You say, well, what's your relationship to the basic elements of life? To the air, to the oxygen, to the sun, to the water, to the food. And then what's your relationship to your fellow beings, your animals, plants, humans? Okay? That's not how science works. Science is gonna keep going in. It's really limited institution. Okay? Limited. So be careful from being too limited by science and play with it like a kid. Play with it like a kid. And if you've watched the video up until now, you know, there are more evolved systems out there. Okay? They don't have everything in them, but they have a lot. Enough to be entertained in this game, in this cosmic game that we're playing. Okay? And some of these systems, they're really brilliant ways of God consciousness finding its way back to itself. They've really been refined for many thousands of years. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Buddhism, Hinduism, specific branches of it, you know, Ashtanga Yoga, Raja Yoga, Tibetan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism specifically. Okay, they really have incredible systems in which this God consciousness can finally find its way back without complicating things. Because I don't think life was meant to be understood and dissected. I think it was just meant to be, or meant to be. Enjoy, right? If you're out in nature, do you really care so much about like how much potassium is in a banana, or do you just pick up the banana and enjoy the beautiful sun? And do you really care that there's vitamin D? You know, there's vitamin D from the sun, or are you just gonna sit there and soak in the beautiful sun? And at the end of the day, the choice is yours. Okay? So I want to thank you guys for watching this rant. Okay, listening to me rant about this. And I want to really thank our Patreons. Okay, you guys are amazing. Mwah, you guys are awesome. Okay, you're just amazing. You know, the fact that you've gone through Patreon and you've actually put in your credit card information and you've actually pledged your support, like you don't have to do that really. Okay, so mwah, thank you guys so much. If you would like to be one of those really cute and awesome and amazing people, and support this channel on Patreon, support the growth of it so I can do this full time, so you can keep hearing me rant about stuff, then you could do so. You know, you could just do something as little as $2 a month, and don't be scientific about it. Don't be like, well, I'm gonna put $2. What's $2 gonna do? Well, you know, look at it more holistically. If lots of people here contributed with, you know, $2 a month, then we'd meet the goal. I could do this full time, and after that we could either throw the money for some charity, or my vision is, if we get enough people on Patreon in the long term, have the expenses enough for me to do this full time, and then some money for charity, and then we could start to throw retreats. How would you guys like that? Retreats, because I'm moving to Thailand, right? It's a very nice place where we could start to throw retreats. You know, some psychedelics, some music, some love, you know, some dancing. What do you guys think about that? Okay, so anyway, thank you guys. Thank you for all the existing patrons. Mwah, love you guys, and for all the new patrons, the upcoming patrons. I know some of you guys will support this channel because there's so many amazing, awesome people here. That's about it, and until next time, may the force be with you.